All right. All right. Good morning, Christian Center. How are you? Oh, you're doing better than that. Come on. How are you? You are, man. That was great to see these young people. I don't know about you, but man, some of the, moms and dads, you know what it feels like. Some of those guys, I first met you when you were, before you were born. I mean, I've been here almost that long, and you're 18. I've been about 19 years, and to see you guys grow up and see what God is doing in your life, thank you for sharing that with us, man. That blesses my heart, and I have a lot of faith in the next generation looking at these young people, don't you? I'm pretty excited about what God's going to do with that, yeah. So that's one of our main 5 strategic goals, is that we want to lean into the next generation, help them discover who they are in Christ and to live a life extraordinary for Him. And so we do that with our children's ministry, our youth, and of course our young adults, and just great to see those things happening. And as you heard, we're going to have some food after service, so I'm going to speed this up. I can tell what you're thinking right now, so here we go. So we are concluding a series that we started 3 weeks ago called. That's not really super original, but basically what we've been doing, if you haven't been here, I can catch you up real quick. What we've been doing is we've been pondering something that the Apostle Paul said 2,000 years ago, but it still seems relevant today. Writing from a Roman prison cell. The Apostle Paul said this to the church that was in Ephesus, and by proxy, I believe that he was saying it to us here at this little church here in Steamboat. He says this, he says, "Therefore I, Paul, a prisoner for serving the Lord." In other words, I am in this prison cell because I've just been serving Jesus. Back then, it wasn't always easy to do it. But he's like, man, I'm here because I've been telling my friends about Jesus and sharing it. I'm in a prison cell. But listen to what he says next. He says, "I beg you, I plead with you, don't fall asleep at the wheel. I pray that you will lead a life worthy of the calling that is on your life. That you would recognize a great price has been paid for you to walk free. That you are free from the power of sin, the power of death, and that God now is behind you, and to live a life that's worthy. Don't be like everybody else in this world who's just kind of cruising through, kind of in a coma, not really thinking about what's going on." He said, I beg you to recognize the price that has been paid for you to go and make something happen in this world. And then he says this, he says, "I beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God." You have been touched by God. God has chosen you. And that validates something that we all kind of feel in our life at some point or another. We all realize that at times that it just seems like there's more to this life than just existing. There seems to be that maybe there's more to this life than just living and then dying. That there's a reason for our existence, that you're not here by accident, regardless of what your mama told you. You're not here by accident. You have been designed. God has brought you here for a reason, and you are called to do something and to bring something to this world, something significant, something meaningful. But the truth is that many of us don't know what that is, perhaps, or maybe we don't know where to start. And that's kind of what the heart of this series is to help you think about that and discover that, because we all have a sense that we're called to something, that we're here for more than just what we think. And so in the first week, we talked about how our calling, this is interesting, our calling is first to a who before it is a do. That we are called to a who before we do. Many of you seniors, you're thinking about, what do I got to do with my life? Where am I going? What am I to do? What am I called to do in this life? And you're thinking about that. But the truth is that you're first called to a who before a do. We are called to be like Jesus, to follow Jesus. We're called to be conformed to the image of God's Son, Jesus. That is our goal, and that is our calling. We're called to emulate His approach to life, to look at how He lived His life, and to follow that, and His commitment to loving God and loving people. That is our calling, to love God and love people every day. We don't get to take a day off from that. We got to do it. And last week, when we also talked about how we are called to care, to give a rip. The rest of the world, a lot of people, you don't have to care. But as followers of Jesus, we don't get to ignore the hurting and the needy people that come across our lives. We don't get to kind of go, talk to the hand. We recognize that the deep compassion that Jesus had for people. If you see Him, there were times where He literally groaned inwardly because of His compassion for hurting and people who were in need. It just broke His heart. That deep compassion that Jesus had inside of Him should also be inside of us. The same Spirit that's in Him is in us, and so we should have that same care, and that compassion for people and for people who are hurting and in need will compel us to not just care, but it will compel us to take action, to do something, to give something, to help in some way. Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. We talked about this last week. And like the Good Samaritan, you and I just don't get to walk away or walk by the hurting people that we come across. Because here's the truth, and we know this, and we talked about it. To say that we care, but to not act is to not care at all. Let's just be honest. Oh, I care deeply. But if you're not doing anything, then maybe you don't care as much as you think, right? And so we've got to do something. Our compassion will call us to act. So that was last week. Today, I want to conclude by looking at a calling that all Jesus followers have. Now, you may have heard this news. I don't know if you have, but you may have heard that Jesus died. And you may have heard that Jesus rose from the dead. Come on, let me say that again. This is a big part. You heard that baby Jesus died, but have you heard that he's alive? Yeah? That is, amen. That's what wakes us up in the morning. That's what gives us joy in the midst of difficult times. There is a resurrection. Jesus was raised from the dead. And over the next period, over the next several weeks of his life, Jesus met with, he ate with, and he basically showed himself to hundreds of people. Personally, there were people that saw Jesus dead on the cross. He was dead as a doornail. And then over the next few weeks, they ran into the resurrected Christ and saw that he was alive, and it proved it to them, and it blew their mind. And then, right before Jesus ascended back to heaven, back to his Father, he gathered his 11 disciples on a mountain somewhere near the Sea of Galilee, and he issued what has become known as the Great Commission. This is something, this is not what he called it. This is what historians or Bible scholars have called it. It's a Great Commission. It's this big thing that he left. These were his final recorded words on earth, and they represent one of the most important life assignments and callings that we as believers have. Here we go. First he says this. He says, all authority now that I've been raised from dead, now that I predicted my death and resurrection, and I did it, all authority in heaven and on earth has now been given to me. Father God has given all authority to me. That's an incredibly bold and powerful statement that perhaps deserves a little bit more attention and a little bit more study on our part to know what he actually meant there. All authority, he says, in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, because of all authority be given to me, here's what I'm going to tell you to do. I need you to what? Go. I need you to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And I want you to teach them. Now, what does he want us to teach them? He wants us to teach them to obey everything Jesus commanded us. Now, just as a side note, do you know what Jesus commanded us to do? Love. He commanded us to love. John 13:34, look at what Jesus said at the last Passover. He said this. He said, a new commandment I give you. You guys are under the old covenant. The old covenant was you need to follow these 10 commands, which have turned into 600 laws. And if you do that, you will live. But I'm giving you a new covenant. I'm going to pay and fulfill that law. And I'm now giving you a new commandment. And it's simple, but it's hard. He says, new command I give you. This is what I want you to live by under this new covenant. I want you to love each other. Not as you want to be loved. That's the golden rule. I'm giving you the platinum rule. This is much harder and bigger. I want you to love each other as I have loved you. And instantly those disciples knew what that meant. I mean, holy moly, they saw him die for them. He gave it all. It was a passionate love. And so in some ways, his command that he gave us and gave them was simpler than the commands that Moses gave. But in some ways, they're harder, right? But what I love about his command is that it's simple. You and I, this is what's great. We can study the Old Testament and try to figure out all the commandments and all the laws and try to follow them. And boy, we can't memorize them and it's hard. This one we know. I know everywhere I got to go. All I need to do is love you as Jesus loved me. And that's hard. But boy, that helps me because in any situation I find myself in that I don't know what to do, circumstance, some relational discord, something broken, something in my life, all I have to do is ask myself, how would Jesus love in this situation? And the answer is pretty clear usually, right? Jesus' love, we all know what he would probably do. What does love require of me is the commandment that Jesus gave us to live our lives by. So I love this. I love this. So, but let me push that to the side. Let me get back to this Great Commission. Jesus called us on that mountain to do two things. Number one, he called us to go. What does that mean? Does that mean that I got to go to Africa? Well, let's look at this. The Greek word for go in there is interesting. It's poriome. Poriome. It means to travel, yes. It means to get out of here, to depart, to leave this, to take a journey. So those are true. But it also, this word go and how it was used was also a present participle, which means that it can also be translated in this way. Go means as you go or on your way. On your way, as you live your life, you should make disciples. And so a lot of people, when they hear this Great Commission, got to go, I got to go to some foreign land to fulfill God's calling in my life. I got to go be a missionary for a while. I don't necessarily think that. I think Jesus is more likely saying this to you and I. As you go through your life, as you go to college, as you go here or there, as you do things and you make your life, I want you to make disciples. I want you, as you do your life, make disciples. Now, one last tricky Greek thing here. I don't want to get in. The word make does not appear. That's been translated into English, and they added the word make. And it's kind of the same thing, but it's a little different. In the original Greek, it reads it this way. Jesus says, therefore go and disciple. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I like that better than the English translation, because making a disciple, that seems hard and complicated. I don't know what goes into making a disciple of Jesus and putting these parts together. And that kind of puts the onus on me that I am making it, when in fact, God is the one that makes disciples and does that. So how do you do that? But here's the thing. Sharing what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus, well, I can wrap my mind around that. I can do that. I can share with my friends and my neighbors what it looks like to follow Jesus. And so the best translation of that passage is my translation. Here it is. It says this: all authority in heaven and earth, Jesus said, has been given to me. Therefore, as you go through your life, disciple others. As you go through your life, as you do life, disciple others. And so that's what we're called to do. Now, you may be wondering, what is a disciple then? How do I make a disciple? What is a disciple? Well, a disciple, I would suggest to you, is more than just someone who's converted, who said a prayer one time and said, Jesus. It's more than a church member, because that's not the highest goal by far. A disciple is more than just someone who wears a hype t-shirt or an SCC t-shirt. It's more than that. If you're taking notes, here's what a disciple is. A disciple is a learner. It's a person who is lifelong learning. It's a pupil. It's a student of something. It's a follower or an adherent to some approach to life. Now, you may not know this, but in the New Testament, the earliest believers weren't called Christians. They were called disciples. The word Christian, that term didn't come along until much later. It was actually a derogatory term. It was a slur. Christian meant little Christ, and people are like, oh, you're just a bunch of little Christ, and you're doing your little thing. That was meant as a slur. It's interesting, today, the word Christian is kind of still a slur. It's not a term of endearment most people would use for us, right? But the earliest believers were called disciples. Why? Because a disciple, get this, was a follower of a rabbi. Or a teacher of someone. And if you were a disciple, you were following that teacher's teachings. And you were basically saying, I want to be like you. I want to be like you. You might remember in the Old Testament when Elisha grabbed Elijah, the other prophet, grabbed his robe and said, give me a double portion of whatever you have. Because why? I want to be like you. Or you might remember Ruth telling Naomi, right? Hey, wherever thou go, wherever you go, I will go. I want to follow you, and I want to learn from you. Your life, I see it. And in the same way, you, get this, don't miss this, you are a disciple of Jesus if you've told Jesus, I want to follow you. I want to learn from you. You are a disciple. And according to Matthew 28, get this, if you're a disciple of Jesus, then you are called to disciple others for Jesus. As we do life, we are called to disciple people. Whatever you do in life, you're called to disciple people. You may be a bank teller, and you go to the bank every day, but you should also be looking for opportunities to disciple others. You might be a student. You might be going to college. When you go to college, do well, study. But one of the other things you should be looking for is, as you go along, look for opportunities to disciple others. You might be a business owner and you own a business and you're pretty busy, but you should be looking for opportunities to disciple perhaps maybe your employees, your staff, or your customers, or your friends. You might be a single mom. You might be a stay-at-home mom, but you should be looking for opportunities to disciple your children and your friends. But here's the problem, and here's the elephant in the room, and this is why it's so quiet in this Catholic church right now. This isn't a Catholic church, by the way, but it seems very quiet right now. One of the things is the problems is that many churches and many Christians today are not discipling someone. The modern day of Christianity is that people come to church, they kind of do the church thing, they clock in, they clock out, and then they go on with their lives. But there's no discipling happening. And I think a lot of church people think, well, the church should be discipling me. The church is discipling me, and they should be discipling them, and they should be discipling others. But people, we need to remember, you forget, we are not the church, you are the church. This is not the church, you are the church. You are the gathering, the ecclesia of Jesus, the gathering of Jesus people, right? And so it is your call. Jesus told his disciples, you go and make disciples, right? And so we are all called to disciple. But let's face it, most of us are not. Why? Well, I think a lot of reasons. Probably time. We're too busy. I think there's a couple of other reasons why many of us don't engage in this. And I think one of them is there's two big misconceptions, I think, about what it means to disciple and how it's done. Let me share with you one of them. The first one is this, and I know many of you feel this way, that you would say, I'm not ready to disciple anyone. I'm not there yet, man. I'm screwed up. If I try to disciple, I'll screw them up, people kind of just thinking, I'm not ready to be a discipler. I'm not ready. I wouldn't know how to lead a prayer meeting, or I don't know how to lead a Bible study or teach a Bible study. If I taught a Bible study, you wouldn't want to come to my Bible study. I'd mess it up because I don't know much about the Bible. I can't teach the book of Revelation. Oh my gosh, I would never be able to do that. Besides, that book is so weird. There's all these beasts with horns and tattoos with 666s and stuff that just gives me the creeps. And anyway, I digress. I don't think I know how to teach that. I wouldn't know where to start. And so I know that I'm not ready unless I know the book of Revelation, how to disciple someone. And so we disqualify ourselves. I think a lot of people feel that way, that, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not biblically literate enough to disciple someone. And I get it. In fact, if you will allow me for just a minute, I would like to reframe your thinking on what it means to actually disciple someone. Of course, discipling means, is always built on the Word of God, on His Word. There's no doubt about that. But it doesn't have to be about doing Bible studies necessarily. In fact, let's go back to what Jesus said in Matthew 28. Listen to this. He said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. In other words, I'm your authority. I'm what you should be looking towards, right? Therefore, what I want you to do now is I want you to go out and disciple all nations. And here's what I want you specifically to teach them. I want you to teach them everything I have shown you. I want you to teach them about me. I want you to teach them about me. I want you to teach them about what I did. I want you to teach them what I said. I want you to teach them what I taught you. And here's a good one. I want you to teach them the way I taught you. This is brilliant. How did Jesus teach his disciples? How did he disciple his disciples? Well, I would suggest to you, for the most part, he didn't do Bible studies with them. He might have done a few, but he didn't carry around a bunch of scrolls and said, all right, let's sit down around this tree and let's go through the book of Isaiah. He did maybe a few times, but in fact, Jesus taught his disciples. He discipled his disciples on the way as they did life. Right? We know that Jesus taught his disciples on the roads that they traveled. He taught his disciples on the highways and the byways. He taught them in the cities. And he taught them in the countryside. And he taught them up on the mountain. And he taught them in the boat. Remember? Right? And so he discipled them as they went along in their lives. Think about this. It's fascinating. He used ordinary things to teach them about faith. He would be walking along with his disciples. He'd, whoa, stop, guys. Look at this fig tree. Take a look at this fig tree. Let me show you something that you may have never thought of. Or he said, hey, consider the birds of the air. Look at them. Or he'd say, oh, look at these flowers in the field. Think about the flowers in the field. He used weddings and funerals to teach his disciples about life and death. He even used water from a well and waves from the sea to illustrate truths about God's power and God's goodness. My point that I'm trying to make here is that the best thing that we can share with people is Jesus. Jesus is the best, and it's the easiest way for people to wrap their heart and their mind around who God is. Jesus was the visible representation of an invisible God. And so he helps us understand what God is really like and what God really wants. And so Jesus is the best thing that we can share with people. His ways, his words, his commands are so beautiful and so simple. Even a caveman can get it. And they're so powerful to bring life change. And so we don't have to memorize or master the Bible. That may be good and that may be helpful, but you don't have to do that to be a great discipler. We simply need to become fluent in Jesus. We need to be familiar with Jesus and how he did it. How did Jesus talk? How did Jesus teach? How did he love people? How did he serve people? My friend, listen to me, hear me, this simplifies it. If you will follow his example, you are ready to disciple anyone, anywhere, at any time. I promise you. The first misconception about discipling is I'm not ready to disciple. But if you are following and studying Jesus and walking in his ways, you are more ready to disciple than you think. Amen? I think that's brilliant. Guess not. You don't, but that's all right. Okay. The second, try this one on. Here's the second misconception and why it doesn't happen. The second misconception is that people say, I don't need someone to disciple me. I found that there are way too many Christians who have kind of excused themselves from being discipled, from this process that Jesus initiated and commanded us and commissioned us to do. I think a lot of people don't see the benefit of being discipled. They're like, I don't really need it. I mean, me and Jesus, we're cool. I got it. We got it. Or I think a lot of people are just too proud. They're like, you know what? I don't want anyone telling me what to do. I don't want you getting in my biz, right? I mean, I'm the boss of my company. I don't want you telling me what to do. I'm the head of my family. I don't need that. I don't need anyone telling me what to do because I'm good enough as it is. I got this thing, right? And I just want to say this. If that's you, if that's how you feel, you are terribly misinformed because that's not how it works. I would argue this. This is a good statement and a good truth. The better you are at something, or the better you hope to be at something, the more specialized help you should seek. I mean, take me. As you know, I'm a professional pickleball player. Why are you laughing? I don't know. I can't, just not anyone can come and coach me. I need specialized coaching at the level that I'm playing this game. Do you understand? Okay, you don't buy that one. How about this one? Let's take football, for example. A sport. Kids play flag football in kindergarten, right? You got kindergarten flag football, and what do you have? You have 10 kids and one coach. Now, why do you have one coach? Well, there's two reasons. First, no one else wanted to do it. You were the only dad that raised your hand, dum-dum, and so now you got to do it. But the other reason is that because they don't need specialized coaching. It's just basic. We're just being general. We can kind of here take the ball, run with it, pick it up, do that. So, but you know what? When you get to high school, though, it gets a little more different. When I went to high school, Moffat County High School, go Bulldogs, we had 3 coaches in football. We had the head coach, we had the defensive coordinator, and we had the offensive coordinator. And in high school, they gave us a few more coaches to speak into our lives because we had gotten a little bit better and we needed to be a little more specialized. By the time you get to college or you play pros, I mean, think about it. You have a head coach, you have an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, you have an offensive line, have a running backs coach, you have a receivers coach, you have a QB coach, you have a D-line, a defensive back, linebackers, and special team coaches. I mean, on and on. Why do you have all these coaches? Because the players are worse and they need more help? No. Because they're better and they need more specialized people speaking into their lives. And this principle is true in anything in life that you want to be better at. If you want to be the best dad, then you want to hang out with some good dads. You want to get around some other people that are thinking and being intentional about being a father and learn from them. If you want to be a great business leader, you want to get around other business leaders to speak into your life. You'll go to conferences. You'll get with people that are doing things innovatively and get around them. If I want to be the best pastor I can be, I don't know if I'll be the best pastor that you'll ever have, but I want to be the best pastor I can be. And I'm so grateful that this church, I want people speaking in my life. And this church has given me 9 elders who have permission to speak into my life, to challenge me, to watch me and observe and go, hey, let's do a tweak here. You might bring it down a little bit. You might go in this direction. Or they love me and they pray for me. And on top of that, I also have 6 pastors from around the country that I meet with on a monthly basis. They mentor me, they encourage me, they challenge me, and they're praying for me. And here's the thing. We talked about this last week, that Paul mentored Timothy, right? He discipled Timothy, he mentored Timothy. I have several Pauls in my life. I've been pastoring for 30 years, but I still have Pauls in my life who can give me advice and give me correction and wisdom. And I'm not too proud to receive it. I'm like, please, tell me what to do. Tell me how to do this better, right? But at the same time, I am also mentoring a few people. I have some Timothys in my life that have come along. And it's not an official relationship. It's not some agreement I've given them. Hey, would you like me to mentor you? Sign this contract and I'll own your life for the next 2 years. No. It is much more casual. They simply call me and they go, hey, I have a thought, right? I'm working in this ministry. What do you think? Or, hey, pray for me. I'm stepping out. I'm doing this. It's a very casual thing. And I'm encouraging them and watching that. My point is that we all need a Paul in our life. And we all need a Timothy in our life according to Jesus. And this is the beautiful, simple process that he put together to help the church grow and to be healthy in our world and to make an impact. But like I said, it's not happening in the church like it should be. And it's unfortunate because here's the thing. This room is filled with a bunch of Pauls. I can point them out to you right now. People who've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and would love to share with you from their failures and their successes and to help you. And at the same time, I know a lot of Timothys. There's some young, hungry people that are like, I'm wanting to grow. I'm figuring this out. I'm coming back to church. I left it as a child, but I'm coming back and I'm trying to figure out now, what does this really mean to follow Jesus? And you got to get you together. You guys need to be looking for each other when you're here, kind of dating that guy. That guy's got some gray hair. He may know something, right? We need to be willing to do that. And I don't know how to make that happen. I know how it happened in my life. I went up to him and I asked. I said, this may sound weird, but you look like you got it going on. Would you help me? I see that you have a great marriage. I'm about to get married. I would like to know what to do and what not to do. I see that you've succeeded in business, financially, spiritually. I see there's something in you. I see that there's a love and a patience. I see the fruit of the Spirit. How? Why? Help me. I asked. And so that would be a great place. Some of you younger people, you need to just come out and just ask and say, hey, would you help me? Would you mentor me? This is how God set it up. Let me read this to you. Writing from that very same Roman prison cell that he wrote to the church in Ephesus, Paul encouraged another one of his proteges, a guy by the name of Titus. And Titus helped the church in Corinth. He helped lead the church in Corinth when Paul wasn't there. Listen to Paul's advice to Titus. He says this, as for you, Titus, promote the kind of living. By the way, that's discipleship. As a discipler, we're promoting a kind of living, an approach to life, a way of kind of doing things. Promote the kind of living that reflects wholesome teaching. Teach the older men to exercise self-control, to be worthy of respect, and to live wisely. They must have sound faith and be filled with love and patience. Similarly, teach the older women to live in a way that honors God. They must not slander others or be heavy drinkers. I'm not sure why he's picking on the women and their drinking, but anyway. Instead, they should teach others what is good. What a good way to approach life. These older women should, get this, train younger women to live wisely and be pure. And in the same way, encourage the young men to live wisely. And you yourself, Titus, you should be an example to them by doing good works of every kind. You see how this was taking place in the church? It's so simple. It's so simple. People discipling people. People connecting with people. People humbling themselves to say, you know what, I want to grow, to be trained and to be mentored in the ways of Jesus. It's a beautiful and powerful thing, and we should engage in it. And in fact, I just want to say this. If your Christianity, your Christian walk right now is not that exciting, in fact, you're like, well, I don't know why I keep doing this church thing. It's because you're doing the church thing. You're not doing the Jesus thing. Jesus told you to go and disciple. And when you stick your neck out there and you get involved in other people's lives and you encourage them and walk with them and help the light bulb go on, this thing becomes so much more fun. This is why I live for it. This is why I'm passionate. You don't have to wake me up in the morning to go and do this. I got such a great job. I get to see that happening. I've tried a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of things. I'm from Craig to get high. And the highest high that I've ever had, and I ever will have, is when God uses me to help someone else. When God uniquely positions me to be there for someone, to help the light bulb go on in their life and to change. There is nothing better. That's when this Christianity thing will work. That's where the juice of this Christianity is. Go and disciple. Jesus knows. You don't know. You and I are like, man, that's scary. He knows better. And so, here's the thing. Clearly, this is one of our callings, to disciple others, to introduce Jesus to people and to help them on their journey to follow him. And so what I want to do real quick before I leave is I want to show you how really easy this can be. Here's the thing. Jesus wouldn't give us all an assignment that we can't easily do. That wouldn't be fair. I mean, sometimes we think discipling is for the professionals. That Pastor Troy, you never say that. But my point is you think that way. But the truth is he gave this assignment to all of us, and then all of us should be able to do it. In fact, discipling is so simple that even a second grader can do it. And I know that's true because we have a Christian school here in this church that have second graders discipling first graders and fourth graders discipling third graders. That they meet together, and in their way and in their language, they're encouraging them to follow Jesus. Isn't that brilliant? So even a second grader can do it with God's help. And so let me give you two thoughts how you can do it. Number one, you can make disciples by your example. By your example. Look at what Paul said in Philippians 3:17. He said this, join with others in following my example, brothers, and take note of those who are living according to the pattern that we gave you. In other words, Paul said there's a pattern. There's an equation that I want you to understand. Know this equation. He tells us what that is in 1 Corinthians 11:1. He says this. Here's the pattern. Follow my example as I followed the example of Christ. This is where he said, follow me as I follow Jesus. Now, this word follow is fascinating. In the Greek, the word follow is mimetes. I got to say it right. It means, it's where we get the word imitate. We can do that. Parrot someone. If you want to be a good discipler, learn to imitate Jesus, his ways, his approach, his tone, his words. And you can disciple. In fact, I know this is how it happened for me. When I first gave my life to Christ, I was 21, and I didn't know Jesus from Adam. I was raised in Craig. I guess Jesus was not in Craig. No one told me about Jesus. I didn't understand it. And long story short, it was a hard transition to understand what that meant. In fact, the thing is that when I gave my life to Christ and I invited him to be more Lord of my life, I didn't really believe in him that much. I was like at 20% because I hadn't seen him do anything. I didn't really know him very well, but I was like, you know what? I'm giving this a shot. He said if I follow him, I would see some things. And so I decided to follow it with all of my heart. Even though I didn't really believe all of it, I was about 20% in. And man, I wanted to do it right. I was going to give it a full deal. I was going to do it Jesus' way so that I could go, this didn't work either, and I could go on to something else or go back to what I was doing that wasn't working already. You know what I'm talking about? And so I said, hey man, I'm going to do this and I'm going to give it all. And so it was hard for me in those first few months to figure out what it meant to live as a Christian. Now, I had met some Christians in my life. I'd met some legalistic Christians in Craig who were just very judgmental, and it was all about do this, don't do that, what you couldn't wear, how you couldn't talk, all that stuff. And I'm like, is that what it looks like to follow Jesus? But I'd also met some carnal Christians, Christians who were only Christian in name, where there wasn't really much of a change. They might have said a prayer, but there wasn't much of a change. And I looked at them and I'm like, is that what it looks like to follow Jesus? But soon after I asked Christ in my life, about 4 months after that, I was about to become homeless. My roommate left and went back to Phoenix, and I didn't know what to do. So the next Sunday I went to church. And after the church, I went down, and my pastor, his name was Pastor Mike Robertson, I asked him to pray for me. And I told him my situation. I said, would you pray for me? And he did. And what he did more than that, after they prayed, about 10 minutes later, he came back, and he and his wife invited me to move in with him into their home. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think this was a good idea. We ran in two different circles. We had two different lifestyles. I had no idea what it meant to live with the pastor. Who would want to live with your pastor? No. Or the reverend, or the father, or the priest, or whatever he was. I still hadn't quite figured out what his role in my life would be. So I was like, I don't know if this is good. But I didn't have a lot of choice, and so I moved in with him. And about a week after I did that, I was glad I did. Because, man, it was so weird. That month I was with him, for the first time in my life, I saw how the Christian life could be done. It was fascinating. I saw the way he lived. He lived the same out there as he did at home. He was normal, he was funny, but he was also gentle. I saw his gentleness and his kindness and his patience and his generosity. He was letting me stay there for free. And all those things affected me. I was just like, whoa. And then not only that, every morning I remember looking through my bedroom, across the living room in the kitchen, and I would see him in there reading his Bible. And then I would hear him talking to someone, and I found out later he was praying to God. That was weird, early in the morning, like 5 or 6 in the morning. And that affected me. And not only that, here's the big one that I found. I saw the way that he treated his wife. I didn't have a great, I don't know. I just saw the way he served her. I mean, he doted on her. He was busy as a pastor of a little church. He would make dinner all the time. He would, I can't tell you how many times that month I saw him vacuuming the living room floor. And I just was impressed by that. And I'm telling you, living with him, I learned to imitate Jesus by imitating Mike. I think this is important for us to think about. For you, if you're a parent, this is huge. As parents, we need to be mindful of this process. Because one of our greatest callings on earth is to disciple our children. I mean, if you've been given a child and you're a follower of Christ, that's your job. It's what we're here to do. You are here to help your kids discover who Jesus is and to fall in love with Jesus and give them an opportunity to follow, to whet their appetite, to help them to taste and see that God is good, right? And that by the time they leave your home, they want more of Jesus rather than less, like a lot of kids leave home, right? They're like, man, what does God have for me? Like these seniors here, I love that. Right? And unfortunately, I think, and I just watched this, I see a lot of parents, I'm not judging, but it just seems to me that they think that their greatest calling is to help their kids become a great soccer player or baseball player. It's all about the hockey or whatever, or ballerinas. And again, I'm not bagging on those things. Those are great. But man, priorities. It just seems like some families' priorities are built completely around helping your kids become enormously busy. Go, 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 go. And or be successful in some little league sport that won't have much contribution in their lives later on. It's about priority. Mom and dad, your first calling is to disciple your children. And now, it's not the church's job, it's yours. We get an hour with them once or twice a month, perhaps. It's better with what you are. And of course, we'll partner with you. That's why we're doing a VBS. That's why we get as many kids as we can to go to youth camp, because many of you remember that week at youth camp, light bulb went on, right? You heard some things and God spoke into your life. We got to get kids in that thing. But the more important thing is that daily you are imitating Jesus to your kids. Okay? Number 2, you didn't like that one. I'll go to number 2. You can talk. Number 2, the second way you can make disciples is with your words. I'll come in for a landing here. Look at what God told Moses to do with Joshua, his protege. In Deuteronomy 3:28, God tells Moses, he says, I want you to commission Joshua. I want you to give him a job to do. I want you to give him a project. I want you to put him in charge of something. And I want you to encourage him. I want you to spur him on. I want you to strengthen him. I want you to build him up. For why? He is going to be the one that leads this people across the Jordan River. And he will cause them, he's the one that's going to help them inherit the land that I've promised to give to them. God tells Moses, listen, disciple Joshua. Encourage him. Strengthen him. Speak into his life. Speak some words into his life. With your words, Moses, tell him who he's going to become one day. Tell him who he can be and what he can do. Encourage and strengthen him with your words. I go back to Pastor Mike. I think about this. He did that with me. He told me one time, I have 2 moments in my life that I remember where someone spoke something into me, and changed me. 7th grade football coach, Gary Tague, he's still in Craig, Colorado. This might be hard for you to believe, but when I was in junior high football, I was kind of short and a little dumpy and a little slow. Yeah, I know. Anyway, I didn't have much to offer that football team, but that coach pulled something out of me at the end of the school year. We had an awards banquet, and everybody was getting awards for fastest, most touchdowns. I'm like, what am I going to get? He gave me a little football. I still have a little plastic football, and it said, the Most Guts Award. And I still live up to that, don't I? But he saw courage in me. And he spoke it and draw it out of me, man. And I'm thankful for Gary, and I'm thankful for Mike, because Mike did the same thing with me. He told me that he saw something in me. He said, you have a gifting. And he stirred it up inside of me. He pulled that out of me. That's discipling. It's recognizing a gift or a talent in someone and saying, come on. And he challenged me, and he asked me to do things that I couldn't have done or I didn't think I could do. In fact, when I was barely a year old, this was a gamble. I was barely a year old in the Lord. He asked me to lead the young adult Sunday school class that they had at their church. And I'm like, Mike, I think this is a mistake. I'm like, the Sunday school class is a brand new term in my vernacular. I haven't used that word ever. I don't even know what one is and what you would do in such a thing. But he encouraged me, and he strengthened me. He said he could do it. He told me I could do it. And you know what? He was right. I did it, and it was the funnest thing, man. It was one of the most rewarding things I'd done in my life, that little Sunday school class for that year or two. And then 2 years later, he came back to me, and he invited me. He said, I want to invite you to leave Texas and to go to California with me and my wife, because we're going to start a new church in Oceanside, California. And I went, well, I'm excited for you, but what would I do in that scenario? I didn't know church. I didn't know my left hand from my right hand spiritually. He said, Troy, you're an evangelist. You have a gift, man. It just seems I see you talking to people, and when you share your story and what God has done to you, you can't help yourself but tell people about the good news that you've discovered. And we could use that out there as we start a new church. And so Mike encouraged me, and he strengthened me, and he challenged me. And I went, and it changed the trajectory of my life. I'm not saying that you need to do that. I'm just saying I am grateful for the investment that certain people had in my life, because it changed my life. And so let me end with 2 questions. Number one, I want you to think about this. Are you a disciple of Jesus? Are you a fan of Jesus, or are you a follower? Are you a disciple of Jesus? Are you following Jesus? If so, go to question number 2. Are you discipling someone? If not, go back to number 1. Because as followers of Jesus, we will be disciplers of Jesus, right? Why? Here's why. Because when you know Jesus, when you truly know who Jesus is and what he's done for him, you will want to naturally share him with others. You will not want to keep him to yourself. It will not be a private, personal matter. You have the key to life. You will want to share that. And so as followers of Jesus and as disciples of Jesus, we'll naturally want to help others follow him too. But if you're not doing that, why not? What's holding you back? I know, probably time. I'm just busy, Troy. I got stuff going on. I got kids. I get it. Or maybe it's pride. Maybe you're like, I don't have to do that. I'm exempted from the thing that Jesus told us to do. I don't have to. Or maybe you just, like a lot of us, feel like you're not ready. You're like, I'm not qualified, or you don't know how. Well, if that's how you feel, listen, if you feel that way, but you want to fulfill this calling that God has in your life, you want to experience the joy that comes from helping other people discover the way and the truth and the life, but you're not sure where to start or how to start, I just want to pray for you and ask God to help you before we go, so that you can do the one thing that Jesus told us to do: go, disciple, to engage in that somehow, some way. Okay? Can I pray for you? Would you bow your heads and hearts with me? And I'll do that. In fact, I'm just going to ask a question right now with every eye closed. If you're here this morning and you're like, man, I'm not doing it like I should, I know. Or, you know what, I'm scared to do that. I'm afraid to step in. I don't know if I could do that. Or I don't know where to start. How would I start? Who would I start? If that's you, if you feel any of those questions, would you just honestly, between you and God, just raise your hand right here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15. Okay, thank you. Put them down. Father, you see these hearts. We want to do this. We want to engage with you with this great commission, this thing, this plan that you had for changing the world, and you're depending on us. It's not going to happen any other way. People by osmosis aren't going to pick this up. And so here you see these hands, and they said, I want to engage. I pray that you will help them. I pray that you would help us to engage, to step out in faith and trust that you will use us some way. I pray that, number one, you give us eyes to see and ears to hear the people in our life that could use some discipling. In fact, I bet you right now, if you'll think about it, there is someone in your life that you're like, I've been feeling called to them, but I don't know what to say. I don't know where to start. Here's an answer. Ask God. I think Jesus left every morning and went up in the mountainside to pray. And I often thought for years that he went and prayed by himself because he was praying to God about his ministry, about this new movement. How do we spread this around the world, God? What do we got to do? I am now convinced, I think Jesus sat up there and prayed for his disciples. I think he sat there and said, God, help me with Peter. Help me help him. I see so much greatness in him. I see what he can be someday, but I don't know how to draw it out. Father, would you show me a way that I can help the light bulb go off in his heart, that he could see himself in a new way? Help me to do that. And I think he came down and he constantly put Peter in positions where he had to depend on God. Come on, Peter, step out of the boat. So that's what we're called to do, is to pray about those people in our life. How can I help them follow Jesus? How can I help them learn about Jesus? And you will tell us. You'll give us a word or a thought or an encouragement that we could share with them. So God, I thank you for this process. It's simple. You just need us to engage. I pray that you would help us to do that. Help those people. Help us to imitate Jesus to our children, to our families, to our friends, Lord. It's the greatest calling that we can have, Lord. And we thank you for helping us do that in Jesus' name.